The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Bryce Underwood has officially flipped his commitment.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Not going to go through the whole thing. Let's just talk about Bryce Underwood. Because there's been a lot of things that I have been talking about that now can kind of come to light. We'll go a little bit through the timeline as to what happened, and we'll also talk about how big of a commitment this is for Michigan. I've got my timeline up in my screen, and we will get to that. But okay, so number one, this is a giant move for Michigan. This is something that Michigan has been working on for a very long time, right? This didn't just start as the season started to go downhill. This was something that they have worked on since I was told somewhere back in the spring. And the Wolverines ended up prevailing. But like I said before, it was very much like a Jim Harbaugh style thing where every kind of little thing had to go right for this to work. Okay. And now suddenly, not only does Michigan for the second time in the last 8 years get the number one player in the country, but it's almost consensus. Rivals, come on, get your stuff together. He's number 2 overall on Rivals, but he's number 1 on every other recruiting service. Obviously, the second 5-star in the class. And this is a shot across the bow, this is a paradigm shift in college football. Because this is going, and I understand he's a guy in the backyard. He's 15 minutes away from Ann Arbor, all of those things. But considering he has been committed to LSU since January 6th, I believe. And I went to their boards last night. They had some nice stuff to say about me. But there was zero doubt that he was going to be signing in the class, right? Because the SEC has long had a stranglehold on elite talent, whether they were from the South or the North. This is a shot across the bow. This is a game changer. This is essentially, and I'm not going to be superstitious about it, but it's kind of like a knock on wood thing, a can't miss prospect. He is the next Trevor Lawrence. I've got Connor Stallions calling me right now to talk about it. This is something that is just unprecedented for Michigan. This is a different era than the Rashawn Gary of it all. When it was basically trying to explain like what the school can do for you, and Michigan got itself into the NIL game. It got itself into a pole position over the last couple weeks with Bryce Underwood, and it's suddenly going to pay off. Now, here's the thing about it. It's going to also have a ripple effect in that it's going to lure other top talent to Ann Arbor, right? This was we've talked a little bit about like Derek Meadows, and I know that Ty Haywood's name has come out a little bit here since. These are names that I'd been hearing since Sunday that Michigan is wooing and getting having a pretty good chance of flipping from. That's not a guarantee. Meadows is not necessarily tied at the hip with Bryce in the same way, but I think it certainly improves Michigan's chances. I think you'll see some offensive changes. I think you're going to see a lot of people in the transfer portal that you maybe wouldn't have seen before. And I think when you look at 2026, what you're going to start seeing is a bunch of different players suddenly looking at Michigan. And some of it will be NIL plays and such, but there will also be just guys that otherwise weren't going to be looking at Michigan that now will, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. This is going to become a little bit more of a coalition of people who really wanted to do this. So Connor Stallions again, we will get to him momentarily, but not on the show. Speaking of, huge to have him involved. That was part of the turning point, was being able to have Connor Stallions a part of this recruitment. So the fact that Michigan, they didn't embed him, like I said, this was a Belleville play to kind of make all of these things happen. But nonetheless, this was huge to have him involved, have a guy who knows Michigan, loves Michigan. And he wasn't really actively recruiting Bryce Underwood to Michigan, but he still found a way to deliver.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That winning $5 bet could be on some Week 12 action. We mentioned the Commanders heavily favored over the Cowboys. Well, FanDuel, that's a big number. Washington is laying 10.5 against Dallas. It is crazy how bad this year has gone for the Cowboys, but no one's that sad about it. Visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes.
Let's talk about it. The Colorado Buffaloes, it's big news, right? We just saw it happen on the Pat McAfee show, and if you didn't, I'm glad I could break this news for you. Five-star quarterback Julian Lewis announced his commitment to the Colorado Buffaloes. He picked Colorado over USC, over Auburn, over Georgia, over Indiana. He was one of those players who is a transcendent recruit, right? He's reclassified. He's been dominating in the Georgia high school football circuit at the highest level possible. And he has quite the resume to go along with him. But let's just talk about how we got to this point, right? Julian Lewis has been a highly sought after recruit for quite some time for the Colorado Buffaloes. They made it clear that once there was interest reciprocated from him, right, that they went all in on him because Coach Prime needed a quarterback, right? Colorado needed a quarterback. They needed someone to fill the shoes of Shedeur Sanders, who is the best quarterback in college football, which is not easy, right? It's not easy to show up and be like, hey, I'm a five-star freshman. I'm going to replace Shedeur Sanders. So it's a challenge, right? And I think they needed someone who was willing to do that. And Julian Lewis is that guy. Let's talk about his career over there at Carrollton in Georgia. So on the season, thus far through 11 games, which means his season's not done yet, he's thrown for 2,800 yards, 2,842 yards. He's completed a career high 77.8% of his passes. He's averaging 14.2 yards per completion. He has averaging 258 yards per game, 40 touchdowns, 4 picks, and his previous 2 years, he's thrown for 48 touchdowns. So clearly that's around on par for him, and he's not done yet. He's also rushed for a couple touchdowns, ran for 90 yards. And so Colorado gets their quarterback of the future. And for Deion Sanders, this is a huge win, right? I think this does 3 things for Colorado, and these are the 3 most important things about landing Julian Lewis. 1, you get your quarterback of the future who can replace Shedeur Sanders. They had Ryan Staub, they had Walter Taylor, they had a lot of uncertainty behind Shedeur. Now you get your quarterback of the future. You get other recruits, right? When you land a 5-star quarterback, you don't get just one recruit, right? There's going to be other recruits who maybe look over their shoulder and be like, maybe I should check out Boulder, Colorado. Maybe I should be going to play for Coach Prime. So you get other recruits' interests as well. And then lastly, this shows that Deion Sanders is bought into being at Colorado, right? There's a lot of NFL noise. There's a lot of noise surrounding where's he going to go next. Well, he's already said that he wants to stay in Boulder, and now landing a 5-star quarterback over USC, Indiana, who's hot right now, over Auburn, who had an interest in him somewhere along the lines. Like, this is a big deal for Colorado, and Coach Prime and I think everyone in Boulder know just how big a deal this is. And so let's just go over a few of Julian Lewis's accomplishments and scouting report so that way we could sort of understand what we're getting in him. First of all, he was classified from the class of 2026 to the class of 2025. So he is a year younger, right? So this is his senior year, but it should be his junior year, which means he's well beyond his years. Andrew Ivins of 24/7 Sports compared him to Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. He said he's a quarterback protege that will exit high school with over 10,000 career passing yards despite reclassifying and foregoing his senior season. Says he lacks physical elite traits, but is an elite distributor of the ball with his quick release and advanced mechanics that picked apart defenses in Georgia's highest classification. Frequently in sync and in tune with his receivers as he excels with pace, throwing with pace and precision to use the first and second levels, has continued to progress as a fluid, full field reader over the years, and is the type of young signal caller that will work through his keys and reads while looking off defenders, can sense pressure and slip away from sacks, but shouldn't be viewed as a dynamic athlete, capable of connecting with some deep shots, but prep spray chart is painted with horizontal tosses, and camp evaluations suggest he can keep improving as a vertical passer. Overall, he projects as a new age point guard that can push tempo and a modern spread attack with his pinpoint accuracy and savvy decision making. Smaller statue is not ideal, but has the skills to win games on Saturdays. In terms of what he's done, right? 2023, he was the Max Preps National Sophomore of the Year, finalist for the Gatorade National Player of the Year, Regional Player of the Year, and for the second consecutive year, he led Carrollton, to 11-2 record and led them to a quarterfinal appearance. This season, let's look at how they're doing, because obviously we want to know how they're doing this year, right? It's his final year. Carrollton is currently ranked, or at one point was ranked in the top 25. They were one of the best teams in the country, and so I think that's not an indictment, sort of shows just how good he's done, right? Because obviously you want your quarterback to lead you to glory. Julian Lewis has led Carrollton to a 11-0 record this season, so clearly they are contending for state. They're 4-0 in the region. They're first in the region, and they are playing against Georgia powerhouse Valdosta on Friday. So Julian Lewis's season is still going. If you guys missed what I talked about, what he brings to the table, he's not viewed as a deep ball threat that's just going to beat you with his arm. He's someone who's quick, he's fast with his release, and he's someone who's going to get the ball to the open man, and he knows how to read a defense. On the Pat McAfee show, he said he was reading cover 3 at age 10. If I remember correctly, and I'm not going to say what defense it was, but Patrick Mahomes said he didn't know how to read defenses until he got to the NFL. So clearly Julian Lewis is advanced for his age, right? Julian Lewis is someone who changes the game for Colorado. He's someone who does all of the right things. And plus, he's someone who Colorado needed, right? I think there was a lot of questions, like I've been saying, a lot of questions about where they would go next after Shedeur. And I think Ryan Staub was very serviceable in the one time he started last year. I think Walter Taylor has a lot of potential. I think the Wade twin Destin Wade has a lot of potential. But none of those guys really screamed quarterback of the future for Colorado. And for me, Julian Lewis screams that, right? Because you're getting him. You're going to get other recruits to go with him. Carday Smith. I'm not saying he's committed yet, but he did back off his pledge from USC, right? And they have a slew of IMG guys that they're after right now. So with a quarterback that could be the face of your class, this Colorado class has a chance to really take a major leap up. They're currently ranked 78th in the country. They have two top 200 guys, top 300 guys, depending on your recruiting service. They have 3 4-stars, according to 24/7 Sports. But yeah, they have Julian Lewis. They have Chauncey Gooden, Adrian Wilson, the 4-star receiver. They have Quanell Farkin, 4-star wide receiver. Christian Hudson, who they flipped from UCF. Alex Graham, the DB out of Detroit. Montrez Walker, a linebacker out of Beaufort, Georgia. Antonio Branch Jr., a safety out of Miami. Then they got Zane D'Souza, who's a tight end out of Loveland, Colorado. Corbin Lazier from Johnson City, Tennessee. And then Jay Gardenhire from West Bloomfield, Michigan, offensive tackle. So this class is coming together nicely. This class is coming together real nice for Colorado. And I don't think Deion Sanders is done yet, right? I think there's a lot of recruits out there that, whether committed or not, they are sort of probably going to be eyeing this Colorado class. And Deion Sanders, as we all know, you can't count him out until there's pen put to paper. So for some recruits that may be committed elsewhere, if Deion Sanders comes knocking, right, I think a lot of people will have to listen. I'm going to go over some of the comments before we move on. Let's see. How can you scream quarterback of the future if you're not given the opportunity, right? Well, I think it's a good question, right? Julian Lewis is supposed to be a senior in high school next year, right? And we haven't always seen these reclassifications work out well, right? Quinn Ewers, I think, is the best example of it working out well, the Texas quarterback, because there's been other instances like JT Daniels did so when he committed to USC, which he had a really good freshman year, or he had a really good debut year. He got injured right away. I don't remember if that was his freshman year, I guess his second year, but JT Daniels was really good at times. Quinn Ewers is really good. And then there's been some other instances. So for Colorado, I think they really need to make sure that they bring him in, get him ready, and sort of do everything that he needs to help develop. Because at the end of the day, he should be a senior in high school next year. So it's a lot of pressure on him to sort of step in and replace Shedeur Sanders. So this is what Colorado needs to do. One, I'm hoping for Colorado's sake and for his sake that he can enroll early, right? So that way he can sort of understand the offense and get to sort of working out at a college level, build his body to a college level quarterback. Excuse me. 2, you cater the offense to him, right? If Colorado is going all in on him, they're selling the point of him playing early. So the offense needs to be catered around his skill set. I don't know if that means they want him launching the ball 60 yards down the field, right? In the evaluations that we talked about, that's not his game. So they need quick, they need hitting open receivers, they need letting him go through his progressions. Excuse me. So Julian Lewis needs to be in the offense that caters to him, right? And thirdly, I don't think it would hurt for Colorado to bring in a transfer to sort of back up or start before Julian Lewis is ready, right? There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks in the portal. There is every year, and they're going to need someone who has that experience. There's going to be someone who needs to be there as guidance, right? And none of the quarterbacks that they have on the roster right now are that experienced. So it wouldn't shock me if Colorado gets an experienced quarterback who can help Julian Lewis, but at the same time, like I said, they cater this offense to him. He gets in there early, hopefully, and is able to sort of work through things. And then you just got to understand that he's young, right? So there's going to be a lot of growing pains. So as fans, people need to realize, like, hey, he's a 5-star freshman. Yes, he's great. Guess what? Not everyone plays right away as a 5-star freshman, and not everyone is really good as a 5-star freshman, right? We've seen, to go back to Quinn Ewers, his first year was up and down, right? Arch Manning, Texas quarterback, hasn't played yet because he's been sitting behind Quinn Ewers. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, he had some strong moments and he's had some not so great moments. Like, you have to understand that these quarterbacks are all young and they need time to develop. So for Colorado to land him, though, that's a huge statement for Coach Prime. I don't think Colorado fans could be more happy than they are, because this is sort of, I think, a sign, right? And if things go a different way, I'd be really shocked now. But this is a sign that Deion Sanders is here for the long run, right? You don't go all in on a 5-star quarterback unless you know that you plan on coaching. And if you do, well, that'd be a story for a different day, and we would have to talk about that. But huge pickup for Coach Prime. I think this shuts down some of this Dallas Cowboys talk. I think this maybe helps expedite his raise that he's probably going to get after the season, because Coach Prime is coaching his tail off, and we're seeing results on and off the field.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Kevin Sperry flips from Oklahoma to Florida State.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So the Noles finally get a quarterback commitment that really wants to be there. Obviously, this is a out of the blue kind of scenario. Kevin Sperry has committed. He is from Geyer High School in Denton, Texas, just northwest of the Dallas Metroplex. Plays at a prominent football program, one that wants to compete for state titles each and every year. And their football facilities, I've been to that high school, are as good as any in the country. He's at a place where development and winning are an everyday adventure. So great program he's from, but he's also got some background that's really interesting. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But first, I want to go over what he does and why he fits Florida State. Here are some of the things that I know about him from watching film. This kid I haven't seen live. It's kind of unusual I say that about Florida State commitment, but he hasn't played in the Southeast. He's been in Oklahoma and Texas. So, number one, this is an explosive athlete, not just a dual threat quarterback, straight up explosive athlete. This kind of kid that could play wide receiver. Kevin is roughly 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in that range, around 200 pounds, and he is put together. Kind of guy that when he takes off, I remember the first few clips I was watching the senior film, I'm like, whoa. He put his foot in the ground, and when he goes forward, it's right now. It's like a running back or a slot receiver. He is going to pressure you. To that point, I'll just read the rushing statistics for him. He played at Carl Albert in Midwest City, Oklahoma last year. They won a state title. He moved to Denton Guyer this year. Rushing totals last season, 93 carries, 563 yards, 6.1, 11 scores. That's pretty impressive. This year, 106 carries, 642 yards, also 6.1, a couple more scores. He's been over 100 yards 3 times against greater Dallas area competition, playing McKinney and schools like that. He knows what it's like seeing FBS level recruits on the other side of the line of scrimmage. He's used to it. And they're still in the playoffs as of today. They're getting ready to play right before I do this. I got a playoff game tonight. But this is a guy that he will make you miss. He's not just a straight line guy. He will power through somebody, and he can hit the hole, again, like a running back. So for Mike Norvell's offense, this is 100% a fit. And it's also a kid that they know. He had been to Florida State's camp a couple of years ago before his junior year. So Norvell knew him. There's a video that Kevin actually retweeted on X that shows him throwing it into a basket from like 50 yards or something like that. So this is a kid that's familiar with Florida State and Norvell and his staff. Got to give him credit. You don't have an offensive coordinator and you're able to land a quarterback. That's pretty impressive. So Oklahoma loses Sperry to Florida State. And to be honest, this is a great sign for a number of reasons. The background with him, he played in Oklahoma, played in Texas, and he's a big winner. It's going to help Florida State down the road. Getting a quarterback out of the Dallas area is great for the Noles. As a passer, junior year, totally different because the competition is much better in Texas, but Oklahoma, he tore it up. 131 of 191, 68.6%, 2,564 yards, 13.4 per attempt, which is ridiculous. 31 touchdowns, 4 interceptions as a junior. This year against much better comp in the state of Texas and Dallas Metroplex, 131 to 234. Again, so far, they're still in the playoffs. As of this recording, 56%, 2,026 yards, 8.6 per attempt, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he's still good, but you're going up against, again, a lot more FBS kids this year. It's interesting, and he's got a lot of talent to it. But so he's moved, and he's been around and able to pick up multiple systems. But this is still the first year he's in Guyers. That's got to be a little bit difficult. I know he's a senior, but still that's not the easiest thing to do. The basic thing that I liked about watching him throw, his motion is natural, his ability to hit guys in stride, no big deal, whether he was on the run or from the pocket, plenty of arm strength. And quite honestly, he kind of reminds me of a shortstop, a guy that's played the middle infield that has to get a pass off quickly or throw off quickly to complete a double play or something like that. He has some of that twitchiness with the way he throws. That may sound kind of odd, but in today's game with RPO, which obviously Florida State uses constantly, he is very, very good at finding a way to get the pass off under duress. Sperry is a very anxious player, as I like to say about some quarterbacks. There are plays where watching his senior film and he has a clean pocket. But after so much time, he doesn't think somebody's open. He's still sitting there. He'll escape the pocket when he doesn't need to. This is a feel. This is an experience kind of deal. It's very common. Even right now, both of Florida State's young quarterbacks that are playing, Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhawk, you'll see them do that a little bit too. Kevin has the ability to make something out of nothing or make a bad play a really good one with his athleticism. But still, there is no substitute for waiting it out. If there's nobody, I don't care if it's 8 seconds into a play. If the pocket's clean, the pocket's clean. Stay in the pocket. He needs to do that more. 2 other extensions of that. When he has a hot, meaning a guy, they've got a blitz coming or he sees a matchup that he really wants, every now and then he will, even from the pocket or the run, but he won't set his feet properly. Guys wide open, just chill, throw the football, set your feet and go through. There's a few plays where the ball was sailing or it was too high. Even if the play was completed, it wasn't maximized because he just didn't set his feet properly. Lastly, and this is probably the most common yet most difficult thing to conquer, when you do need to run, Kevin sometimes would escape the pocket again. Freak athlete. He makes the first guy miss almost every time. And he has space. Now, he might have somebody coming at him. But even if you are scrambling, if you have space, you have to slow down, set your feet, and then throw. He doesn't always settle his feet before he throws, and quite often he doesn't. That's why his percentage has probably come down this year a little bit. And again, the competition in Oklahoma is pretty good, but it's not Dallas. It's not even close. So I think that's part of it. It's the adjustment. And it's part of just growing up as a quarterback. Not worried about the physical tools at all. But until he consistently settles his feet, he's going to have passes going high. And when he gets to Florida State, I bet the first couple of weeks, I don't know if he's enrolling early, I would assume he is, but the first few weeks of spring, he'll be throwing picks left and right because he's going to be high. He doesn't always settle his feet, and he doesn't have a good trajectory on some of those are going to go high, and free safeties are going to love him. He's got to settle that down, and it's going to take a long time. This is not an instant impact guy because of that kind of stuff, but the long-term upside is through the roof. So it's more or less just technique. That's something that the vast majority of quarterback coaches are used to. Kevin just does it a little more than I'd like to see, but because of his arm talent, his ability to avoid the rush, which is off the charts, he gets more chances. It's kind of like if you're going to shoot free throws against somebody 1 to 10, he gets 15, you get 10. Obviously, that's not fair, but Sperry just makes so many guys miss and extends plays so well, he's going to get more passes off. Teams that don't have good rush lanes against Kevin Sperry, they could have an obvious sack with 2 guys, and he'll make both of them miss or break a tackle and score from 50. That's the kind of athlete we're talking about here. Very unique player. So once again, Florida State lands Kevin Sperry, really, really good prospect. I think that it's easy to see his long-term development, but if you're looking for an instant impact guy, that's probably not the best way to define him. And I think that's one of the reasons, this is the last thing I'll talk about, his recruiting rankings. It's all over the map, which I totally expected when I pulled these up, but here they are right now. 2 of the recruiting services aren't that high on him, and 2 are very high. This is a very difficult evaluation because it's not a short-term one. On3 and 24/7 have him as a 3-star. On3 has him as the 41st quarterback, 247, the 46th. ESPN and Rivals like him much, much more. ESPN has him as the 132nd player and the 11th quarterback in the nation. He's a 4-star. Rivals, 179th player in the nation, 12th quarterback. He is also a 4-star on their service as well. Totally different kind of deal, but it's just quarterback is more subjective in your taste. If you're somebody that if he's not going to play right away, I don't like him that much, then this is not your guy. If it's somebody that you see has some issues with technique and that really bothers you, it's not your guy. Again, subjective. So I think he is tremendously talented. It's up to him to fix some of the basic stuff, along with obviously the Florida State staff. We'll see who the next coordinator is, etc. But he has all the tools in the world that you could possibly want. If you want to watch his huddle film, I would highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun, but you'll see the things I'm talking about, good and bad. They're consistent both ways. Can't teach the arm, can't teach the feet. He's fearless running, but he's also just going to have to learn to set those feet better. Once he does, Kevin Sperry can be a big-time college quarterback.